The pharmacy had his family's name on it, but Harrison Holt barely recognized it anymore. His father had built the six-store chain from the ground up, treating employees like family and customers with kindness. But since Harrison had inherited the business 2 years ago, he had been stuck behind a desk relying on reports and numbers instead of first-hand experience. Now, those numbers worried him. Sales were down. A wave of customer complaints had piled up: rude service, long wait times, prescriptions being mishandled. Employees were quitting at an alarming rate. "Everything's fine," his district manager, Greg, had assured him. "Just a rough patch. No need to overreact." But Harrison wasn't convinced. Something was wrong. So, instead of another boardroom meeting, he decided to find out for himself. A week later, with graying hair dye, fake glasses, and a worn-out hoodie, he walked into one of his own stores as a struggling customer. He had never personally met the employees at this location, so no one would recognize him. That was the point. It was a chilly afternoon when Harrison stepped inside. The pharmacy had the usual fluorescent lighting, shelves stocked with everything from cough syrup to greeting cards, and a line at the counter. He shuffled toward the register, playing the part of a man down on his luck. His voice was hesitant when he spoke to the cashier, a young man in his early 20s with messy blonde hair and tired eyes. "Hey, my prescription's ready, but I'm short $10. Anyway, I can pay the rest later." His voice cracked just enough to sound desperate. The cashier checked the screen. "It's for your blood pressure meds?" Harrison nodded. The kid hesitated. Hold on." He pulled out his own wallet, counted a few bills, and slid a 10 across the counter. "Just take it. I'll cover it." Harrison blinked. He hadn't expected that. "You don't even know me." The kid shrugged. "Yeah, well, I don't think anyone should have to choose between their health and money." Harrison took the bill, genuinely taken aback. "What's your name?" "Travis," the kid said. "Travis Dean." Harrison pocketed the cash, intending to give it back later. "You're a good guy, Travis." Before Travis could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Are you seriously giving customers money?" A woman in her 40s stomped toward them. Her name tag read Margaret, store manager. Her expression was tight with irritation. Travis stiffened. He needed help. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "That's not your job. If he can't afford it, then that's not our problem. You can't just hand out cash like we're a charity." Harrison watched the exchange carefully. Travis clenched his jaw. "I was just trying to do the right thing." Margaret scoffed. "Well, the right thing is following store policy. You're lucky I don't write you up for this." Harrison could see the frustration in Travis's face, the exhaustion in his posture. But he didn't argue. He just nodded, swallowed his pride, and went back to work. As Harrison walked out of the store, his hands tightened into fists. This wasn't just a rough patch. This was a problem, and he was going to fix it. Harrison didn't sleep much that night. The interaction at the pharmacy played over in his mind, every detail sharp. The exhaustion in Travis's voice, the impatience in Margaret's. The way Travis had instinctively helped only to be reprimanded for it. This wasn't just about one act of kindness. It was about culture, leadership. Something in his company had shifted, and not for the better. The next morning, he returned, this time as a new hire. His alias was Harry Garrison, a former retail worker looking for a fresh start. The application process had been rushed, a favor pulled through corporate channels, but the store manager had simply been told to expect a new trainee. No one knew who he really was. Margaret greeted him with a curt nod when he arrived. There was no warmth, no introduction beyond the bare minimum. She handed him a dull blue vest and pointed toward the back. "Shadow Travis," she said. "He can show you the basics." Travis was already stocking shelves when Harrison found him, methodically arranging bottles of pain relievers. His movements were quick, practiced. "You're the new guy?" Travis asked without looking up. "Yeah," Harrison said, adjusting his vest. "Harry." Travis handed him a pack of vitamins. "Start with these. Labels forward, everything neat. If you mess it up, Margaret will have a fit." Harrison got to work following Travis's lead. They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the occasional beep from the registers and the hum of overhead lights. After a few minutes, Harrison spoke. "Been here long?" Travis exhaled through his nose. Feels like forever. In reality? A little over a year. You like it? Travis hesitated. I like helping people. Something about the way he said it made Harrison press further. But, Travis glanced toward the pharmacy counter where Margaret was speaking to another employee, her expression sharp. But management makes it hard, he admitted. They care about numbers, not people. If you take too long with a customer, you get in trouble. If you go the extra mile, you get in trouble. It's all about speed and sales. Harrison absorbed that. It wasn't what his father had built. So why stay? Travis stacked the last of the bottles. Because some people actually need us. You'd be surprised how many customers come in here struggling. Harrison wasn't surprised. He'd seen it firsthand. Later that afternoon, he got a closer look at what Travis meant. A woman in her 70s approached the counter, her hands shaking slightly as she handed over her insurance card. I think there's been a mistake, she said. My medication was supposed to be covered, but they're saying it's full price. Travis checked the system, his brows pulling together. Looks like your coverage changed this month. I can call and double-check. Margaret appeared before he could pick up the phone. If the system says full price, that's what it is. Travis didn't back down. It could be an error. I just need a few minutes to. Margaret cut him off. We don't have time for that. Either she pays or she doesn't get it. Harrison saw the way the woman's shoulders slumped. I can't afford that, she murmured. Travis looked torn, his hands curled into fists at his sides. Harrison had seen enough. I'll cover it, he said. Margaret turned on him. Excuse me. Harrison met her gaze. She needs the medication. I'll pay. Margaret scoffed. That's not how this works. Harrison pulled out his wallet, setting the cash on the counter. Today it is. Travis gave him a sharp look, something clicking in his expression. But he didn't say anything. Margaret huffed but didn't argue further. She snatched the money and processed the transaction before walking off. The woman took the bag with watery eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Harrison just nodded. When she left, Travis turned to him. You didn't have to do that, he said. Harrison shrugged. Neither did you yesterday. Travis studied him for a long moment. He was starting to suspect something. But he didn't push. Not yet. Harrison wasn't done gathering information. And when the time came, he'd make sure every problem in the store was brought to light. Harrison continued working at the pharmacy for the next few days, blending into the routine. He stocked shelves, observed customer interactions, and paid close attention to the way employees were treated. The more time he spent in the store, the clearer the problems became. Margaret wasn't just strict, she ran the place with an iron grip, prioritizing speed over service. Employees barely had time to breathe between tasks, and any attempt to slow down and assist a customer properly was met with irritation. Mistakes were handled with public scoldings instead of quiet corrections. Morale was low, and it showed in the way employees carried themselves. One afternoon, while Travis was on break, Harrison found himself near the pharmacy counter when a mix-up occurred. A young mother with 2 children was trying to pick up her son's antibiotic, but something had gone wrong with the insurance claim. The pharmacist on duty, a man in his 50s with a weary expression, explained that the system wasn't recognizing the coverage, meaning the medication would cost nearly $200 out of pocket. The woman looked panicked. She dug through her purse, her voice tight. That can't be right. He needs this. He's running a fever. The pharmacist hesitated. I can try rerunning it, but it could take a while to sort out. Margaret overheard and stepped in without missing a beat. We don't have time for delays. If the system says full price, that's what it is. The woman's face fell. I don't have that much on me right now. Can I at least put something down and pick it up later? Margaret shook her head. We don't do payment plans on prescriptions. Harrison clenched his jaw. He had seen enough of this pattern. He stepped forward, pulling out his wallet. I'll cover it, he said. Margaret turned on him instantly. Are you serious? Harrison met her gaze without hesitation. She needs the medicine. I'll pay. Margaret scoffed. This is getting ridiculous. You can't just throw money at every customer who has a problem. Harrison didn't argue. He handed the cash to the pharmacist, who processed the transaction without comment. The young mother looked at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Harrison gave her a small nod. As she left, Margaret crossed her arms. You're making a habit of this. First with that old woman, now this? You're not a charity. Harrison kept his voice even. I don't think helping people is a bad habit. Margaret shook her head in disbelief. You're new here, so let me make something clear. We run a business. If people can't pay, that's not our problem. You think corporate cares about one customer's sob story? Harrison's patience thinned. Actually, I think corporate would care a lot. Margaret laughed dryly. Right? Like you'd know anything about corporate. Travis returned from break just in time to catch the exchange. His eyes flicked between Harrison and Margaret, something unreadable in his expression. Margaret sighed. Look, I don't have time for this. Get back to work. She turned and walked off, leaving Harrison standing there. Travis studied him for a long moment. You're not just some random new hire, are you? Harrison didn't confirm or deny it. What makes you say that? Travis folded his arms. Most people in retail don't carry around extra cash just to cover strangers' prescriptions. And the way you talk, you don't sound like someone who's just learning the ropes. Harrison exhaled. There was no point in pretending anymore. I'm Harrison Holt, he said. I own this company. Travis blinked. You're kidding. Harrison shook his head. Travis let out a slow breath. So, all this time you've been undercover. Harrison nodded. I needed to see what was really going on in my stores. Travis ran a hand through his hair, processing. That explains a lot. Harrison glanced toward the pharmacy counter where another customer was being rushed through their transaction. I didn't like what I found, he admitted. Travis let out a dry chuckle. Yeah, well, welcome to the real world. Harrison's expression hardened. This isn't how my father built this company. Travis studied him. Then what are you going to do about it? Harrison already knew the answer. It was time to take action. Harrison wasted no time. He had seen enough and now it was time to act. The next morning, he arrived at the pharmacy not as Harry Garrison, the new hire, but as himself Harrison Holt, the owner. He wore a fitted navy suit, his usual glasses instead of the fake ones, and carried an authoritative presence that immediately shifted the energy in the store. Employees glanced at him with uncertainty, some whispering to each other. Margaret was behind the counter, scanning through a clipboard when she noticed him. Her eyebrows pulled together in confusion. Can I help you? She said, her voice clipped. Harrison walked up to the counter, resting his hands on the polished surface. I think it's the other way around, Margaret. I'm here to help you. She frowned. I'm sorry. Travis stood near the aisles, watching closely. The other employees had stopped what they were doing, sensing something important was about to happen. Harrison straightened. I own this company. And for the past few days, I've been working undercover in this store. The color drained from Margaret's face. Her posture stiffened. That's... Harrison didn't let her finish. I've seen how the store is run. I've watched employees being rushed, customers being dismissed, and basic compassion being treated like an inconvenience. That is not how my father built this business, and it sure as hell is not how I'm going to run it. Margaret opened her mouth, then closed it. She was scrambling for control, but there was none left to grab. Harrison continued, his voice steady. I watched Travis pay for a customer's prescription out of his own pocket. I saw employees afraid to take the time to properly help people because they were worried about being reprimanded. That's not leadership, that's management through fear. Margaret's lips pressed together. We have policies in place for a reason. Policies are supposed to serve people, not the other way around. Harrison exhaled sharply. But this isn't just about policies. It's about culture. And the culture in this store is toxic. Margaret's fingers tightened around the clipboard. I run this store efficiently. Harrison met her gaze without flinching. At what cost? She didn't answer. Harrison let the silence sit for a moment before speaking again. Effective immediately, you're being removed as store manager. The words landed like a hammer. A few employees gasped. Margaret's face twisted in disbelief. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. Harrison's tone left no room for argument. I need leadership that understands the balance between efficiency and humanity. That's not you. Margaret's expression hardened. This is ridiculous. I've given years to this company. And along the way, you lost sight of what matters. Harrison motioned toward the rest of the staff. These employees deserve better. Our customers deserve better. Margaret clenched her jaw, looking around as if searching for support. but no one came to her defense. The atmosphere in the store had shifted. Employees weren't looking at her, they were looking at Harrison, at Travis, at each other. After a tense pause, she exhaled sharply and set the clipboard down. Fine. She turned abruptly, heading toward the back office. Harrison took a deep breath before addressing the rest of the team. Things are going to change. Starting now. Travis stepped forward cautiously. What does that mean? It means this store is no longer going to be a place where employees feel like they're just cogs in a machine. Harrison looked around, making eye contact with each worker. I want to hear from all of you. What's wrong, what needs fixing, what we can do better. If we're going to rebuild this, we need to do it together. A murmur spread through the employees. Some looked skeptical, others hopeful. One of the pharmacists, an older woman with streaks of silver in her hair, cleared her throat. You're really asking for our input? Harrison nodded. And I'll act on it. Travis folded his arms. Then, for starters, we need more time with customers. Not just rushing them through like they're holding up a line. Another employee, a young woman near the beauty section, added, and better scheduling. People are burning out from being overworked. A shift supervisor hesitated before speaking. Some of us have been here for years without a raise. Harrison absorbed each comment, nodding. All of these are things we can fix, and we will. He turned toward Travis. You have the heart this company needs. If you're interested, I want to promote you to assistant manager. Travis blinked. Me? You understand what matters. You care about the people who walk through that door. That's the kind of leadership I want. Travis hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I'd be honored. Harrison smiled briefly before looking at the rest of the employees. This is just the beginning. I'll be making regular visits to all our stores, talking to employees directly, making sure changes are actually happening. For the first time since he walked in, the tension in the room started to dissolve. Employees exchanged glances and some even smiled, something that had been rare in the store. Harrison looked around once more, taking in the faces of his team. This company was built on trust, respect, and care. And we're going to bring that back. As he finished speaking, he felt something he hadn't in a long time. His father would have been proud. Harrison stayed at the store the rest of the day, speaking with employees one by one. Each conversation revealed more cracks in the foundation. Some workers had been juggling multiple roles without support. Others had been reprimanded for things that should have been learning opportunities. A few admitted they had been actively looking for other jobs, feeling like their work went unnoticed. He took it all in, committing every concern to memory. This wasn't just about fixing one store, it was about reshaping the company's culture from the ground up. By closing time, the atmosphere had shifted. Employees weren't walking out with their usual exhaustion. There was something different in the way they moved, lighter, more engaged. Travis lingered near the break room, rolling his sleeves down as Harrison approached. You still planning to stick around tomorrow? Travis asked. Harrison nodded. And the day after that? Travis studied him for a moment before exhaling. Guess I should get used to having the boss around. I'm not here to hover, Harrison said. I'm here to make sure the changes we talked about actually happen. Travis crossed his arms. And what happens if corporate pushes back? Harrison didn't hesitate. Then we push harder. Travis let that settle before giving a small nod. All right. The next morning, Harrison arrived early. Margaret's office had been cleared out, and a temporary manager from another location was overseeing operations until a permanent replacement could be found. Harrison spent the morning shadowing different employees, observing their workflow. A stock associate named Luis explained how they were often expected to unload shipments faster than realistically possible, leading to mistakes. A cashier named Rachel mentioned that break schedules weren't always honored, with employees being called back early whenever the store got busy. It was a pattern efficiency prioritized over well-being. By midday, Harrison stepped into the break room where Travis and a few others were grabbing quick lunches. I spoke with corporate this morning, Harrison said. There are going to be some immediate changes. Rachel set her drink down. Like what? Harrison pulled out his phone, reading from the notes he had taken. First, we're updating scheduling policies. No more calling people in on their days off unless they volunteer. Second, mandatory breaks are going to be enforced. If you're scheduled for 30 minutes, you get the full 30. Third, training programs are being expanded so employees actually feel prepared instead of being thrown into the deep end. Luis leaned back in his chair. That's a lot. Harrison nodded. And it's just the start. Travis wiped his hands on a napkin. What about pay? Harrison glanced around the room before answering. It's being reviewed, but I can tell you this raises are coming for the people who've earned them. A few employees exchanged looks, cautious but hopeful. Rachel shook her head slightly. I'll be honest, I didn't expect any of this when I walked in today. Luis chuckled. Yeah, I thought this was just gonna be another day of Margaret breathing down our necks. Harrison leaned against the counter. That's not how things are going to be anymore. The door to the break room opened and the temporary manager, a woman named Denise, poked her head in. Harrison, there's someone from corporate on the phone for you. Harrison straightened. I'll take it in the office. As he walked out, Travis followed. Think they're gonna fight you on this? Travis asked. Harrison exhaled. I guess we're about to find out. He stepped into the office and picked up the phone. This is Harrison. A familiar voice came through the line. Greg, the district manager. I just got the report from this morning, Greg said. You're making a lot of changes. Harrison didn't let the comment linger. Changes that needed to happen. Greg sighed. I get it, you want to shake things up. But we have policies in place for a reason. If the policies are hurting employees and customers, they need to be reevaluated. Greg hesitated. You're going to get pushback. Harrison's grip on the phone tightened. Then I'll push harder. Another pause. Then Greg exhaled. All right, I'll start working on the logistics for the pay adjustments. But this isn't going to be overnight. I never expected it to be. Harrison glanced toward the door where Travis was waiting just outside. But we're setting the foundation now. After the call ended, Harrison stepped out of the office. Well? Travis asked. Harrison rolled his shoulders. We have work to do. But we're moving in the right direction. Travis nodded, a small smile forming. Good. For the first time in a long time, Harrison felt like the company his father built was finally back on track.